introduce our next two speakers, Dr. Josiah Newton and Dr. Giulia Mancelsi. Josiah is the producer of the YouTube channel That Chemist and works as the president of NewChem Science Incorporated. His channel produces a series of educational videos surrounding the topic of chemistry in a very entertaining format. I suggest that everybody checks it out. Josiah earned his PhD in chemistry from Simon Fraser University in British Columbia in the field of organic synthesis. And Giulia is a solution engineer at Elsevier. She joined us in 2020 and currently supports Reaxys customers in the academic and government sectors. Giulia earned her PhD in chemical science technology at the Institute of Chemical Research in Spain. She also carried out a research stay at LMU München. Giulia brings several years of experience in academic research as a trained chemist and as an active member of international chemistry networks. Welcome to both of you. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Today, I'm going to be giving you a brief presentation about some of our work with Reaxys on YouTube, as well as some context about what we do on the YouTube channel, That Chemist. So about me, I'm a YouTuber. I wouldn't have formally given myself that title until relatively recently, but after doing YouTube for a couple of years and actually making some money doing it, I think I can finally claim that title. I just got my PhD in December, so we're still a relatively young company, but it's been a lot of fun making content on YouTube. So I'll just briefly show you guys a video for about 1 minute to just give you a snapshot about what our content is actually like on YouTube. So here's just a little demo reel of that.
Xylitol as an artificial sweetener is typically used in drugs, toothpastes, and dietary supplements, though seldom as a standalone sweetener. Like with most other sugar alcohols, xylitol has a laxative effect and can cause gastrointestinal discomfort in high doses. So this water-soluble polymer is a binder for medications, as well as hydrogen iodide and elemental iodine. This contains a total iodine species, or 1% of the total content as iodine. It works by releasing iodine, resulting in the death of a range of microorganisms, such as Staphylococcus aureus. It's most often used in healthcare as a disinfectant before and after surgery for healing minor cuts. These will have preferences for certain CHs in a molecule, but they generally have a tendency to form mixtures of products, because these things are so reactive that they'll start nonchalantly just abstracting hydrogens wherever they want in the molecule. Antibiotics play an important role in the treatment of bacterial infections. One of the main concerns that you've likely heard of before is the emergence of antibiotic resistance. How much of a concern is this?
So among the different types of series that we produce videos that appeal to a wide chemistry audience, but we also produce videos that appeal to a research audience, specifically focusing on papers in organic chemistry, as well as some safety-related stuff in a series we have called Chempilations. Now, in terms of this presentation, we're going to have 4 parts. Initially, I'm going to talk about the impact that Reaxys and Reaction Flash had on me as a graduate student. Then I'm going to talk a bit about my journey as a content creator, followed by a discussion of some of the practical insights that I've found through science communication. And finally, I'll finish up with the discussion of some of our projects with Reaxys. So my PhD focused on desulfurative fluorination. I'm an organic chemist. Amongst the types of desulfurative fluorination that I did, I focused on desulfurative fluorination of thionoesters. This can be a useful way to make difluoroethers, and there are other motifs similar to thionoesters which can also undergo desulfurative fluorination, such as these thionobenzodioxyls, which make these difluoro group on the motif shown on the right here. Additionally to the thiocarbonyls, it's also possible to take these benzene dithiols, which is a bit like a dithiane, functionalize alcohols as well as heterocycles, and then undergo desulfurative fluorination to get difluoromethyl groups. Now, while this was the focus of my research, my PhD is over. So let's talk a little bit more about Reaxys. When I was working in my PhD, I used Reaxys a lot. When we were writing papers, You have to do literature searches, especially when you're justifying why you did the research that you already have completed. You have to find pharmaceutically relevant examples. So one of the most useful things to just get like lay of the land on Reaxys is if you're looking up a motif, you can filter by pharmacological data. This can show you the most relevant examples with that motif in the literature, which as a graduate student is very helpful for figuring out how the chemical world actually works. So this was a tool that was really useful when I was a graduate student. In addition, another tool that I found very valuable was Reaction Flash. Reaction Flash is this free app that you can use, which has a bunch of different named reactions, over 1,300 at this point. And they can show you examples from the literature, which you can click on. Through Science Direct, it will link you to the article. And that can be really helpful for finding example reaction conditions to inspire you in terms of setting up a synthesis. So if this is your first time doing a Diels-Alder and you don't know what conditions you'd use, you're not sure what Lewis acid to use, at least you could go onto the app and find some example conditions that would get you started. And as a chemist, you need to get started. So Reaction Flash was a really good boon in that sense as well. Now, as I started developing YouTube videos, I started by posting a series of videos called Introductory Organic Chemistry. Now, this series differs from your typical organic chemistry lecture series, where I wasn't following any textbook. I was just preparing a series of lectures that included modern methodology. One of the issues I ran into when I became a grad student is I just completed my undergrad. I think I have all the tools I need to do research. And you attend just a couple group meetings and you find out no one's doing almost any of the reactions you learned in undergrad, aside from like condensation reactions and maybe a Grignard reaction here and there. So that was something I wanted to address when I started uploading videos. Unfortunately, those weren't financially viable on their own, and I was still a very inexperienced creator at the time. But it led to me producing another series called Important Papers. Now, Important Papers is a series, as I mentioned earlier, where we discuss new papers or interesting papers in the field of organic synthesis that are actually worth people's time, and we'll edit out the parts of the paper that are worth mentioning. So maybe it's just a couple examples from a scope. The viewer doesn't need to see the whole scope. If they want to see the whole scope, they can go read the paper. It also helps elevate papers that are noteworthy to the viewer. So we're trying to provide a service to the viewers here with the series. Fortunately, because I'd been working and using Reaction Flash in the past, I'd been providing feedback to Peter Kadoff from Reaxys, from Reaction Flash. And he'd been a really awesome guy, providing a lot of feedback back and forth, just trying to make the app better because I wanted to help other people have access to this great tool with even fewer errors. And once the YouTube channel was going, it turned out that Reaxys was willing to sponsor the channel. So again, I'd like to really thank Reaxys for their support of the channel and the invitation to speak today. Now, with this YouTube channel, what we found was to appeal to a wider audience, we needed to make more popular content. And the style of videos that we've produced the most of are called tier lists. A tier list essentially ranks a bunch of different objects or items, or in our case, chemicals, into different categories, and then you justify why they're ranked into that category as opposed to another category. Our tier lists can be serious at times, but some of our other tier lists are more fun. The main goal for our videos is to be fun and teach people about chemistry. This is a recent example where we show from S tier to F tier. S tier is the highest ranking. You can think of S for super and F for fail. Everything else in between is just alphabetical. And in this video, we actually tasted these sweeteners. In other videos, we might just be ranking them based on their characteristics. For instance, we did a tier list, which chemical is the worst carcinogen? And as we do this, it tends to engage people in the topics. Now, what this has led to over time is our channel has grown to over 230,000 subscribers. We've also got 359 million impressions. Now, when I was still just doing lab work, I had no idea what an impression was. So if you ever see a thumbnail for a video on a screen on any device, that's an impression. So 359 million times one of our videos has been on somebody's screen, which feels kind of cool. Additionally, we've accrued over 19.4 million views across the channel with a total of 2.2 million hours of watch time, which is just over 250 years, which is another big number. Now, my advice from doing the work that we've done so far on YouTube is to focus on connecting with your audience. If you're producing media online, or if you're producing, even if you're presenting at like a conference or a TED Talk, you have to connect with your audience. So who's your audience? Why are they listening? And how are you going to make them care? One of the things that I really recommend is cutting intro short and outro short as well. And I can show you an example on the next slide where we see some analytics from YouTube where you can start getting an actual valid feedback mechanism to learn how to speak better. Because as chemists and as presenters, we don't ever have opportunities to get valid feedback mechanisms the same way we would with like a TLC, a GCMS, or an NMR, where we can start tuning out what other things are going on and what the problems are. So when you're producing stuff, make sure that your audio is easy to listen to. One good microphone that I would suggest is the Shure SM7B. It's one of the most popular microphones online, and for good reason. It sounds good. It's easy to listen to. Additionally, if you're going to be uploading media online, I highly, 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 highly recommend editing what you're doing before you post it. If you don't edit what you're posting, it's sort of like putting an unpurified compound directly into a patient. You can upload a lot of videos without editing and not understand why they're not working. And if you inject a crude compound into a lot of patients, they're going to have all sorts of side effects. So you need to do a purification before you upload. That's just part of the game. Now, if that sounds intimidating, there's some free tools that you can use. One example is OBS. You can use this to screen cap. You can use it to record your audio. You can also capture your video with it. You can also arrange all of it so that as it's captured, it's formatted to the way you like. One tool for editing is DaVinci Resolve. We use Adobe Premiere, just that's our preference, but DaVinci Resolve is more or less the same. And if you're ever looking to connect with people, Discord is a really good way to do that. And it has a lot fewer issues than Zoom does. So those are just some tools to help make it easier to produce online media if you're struggling to do so. Now, if we look at retention for a YouTube video, for instance, YouTube will show you all of this data for every video you post. So if you really want to understand what's going on, you can get into the weeds and look at every little piece of data. This is one video where we talk about which is the best place to buy chemicals. This is more for amateur chemists and some labs, but it would still be applicable to some medicinal chemists. There's this one point in the video where 4 times as much view time has occurred. And I've never seen this in any video aside from this one. And what occurred here is we were ragging on Sigma Aldrich a little bit and how their prices are a little bit too high. But, you know, they are fast, so I'll give them that. So stuff like this can tell you that your viewers were finding whatever this part was interesting or helpful. And so if you're posting media, look at points for re-engagement and figure out what's working well and what's not working well. If we see a cutoff right at the end where a ton of viewers drop off, that means that they were bored and didn't want to watch the outro. If we see a cutoff at the beginning, that means that a lot of people are clicking off the video. But because a lot of people are starting videos and not finishing it, there's always going to have a bit of a drop off regardless. So I wouldn't look too hard into that all the time. The main thing is make data-driven decisions and just keep being a scientist when you're doing things that aren't science, honestly. So as we were developing our channel and we worked with Reaxys on the important paper series, we've been including a segment showing people how to use Reaxys more effectively in each of the videos, which is sponsored by Reaxys. This is typically a 1-minute segment, and this highlights some features of Reaxys that the viewers might not be aware of. Most recently, we've been showcasing the Reaxys retrosynthesis planning tool. And previously, we also showed the Reaction Flash app. So I'll start by showing you a video of the Reaxys retrosynthesis planning tool that we've included from a previous video. And then I'll show you an example of what Reaction Flash can do.
This is how the authors made the molecule, but I wonder if today's sponsor Reaxys has any alternative ideas about how we could make this molecule. Today we're going to test the retrosynthesis tool of Reaxys, and then we're going to display the only entries that we're interested in. We can also export them so that we can look at them later, such as if we wanted to send them to a peer or colleague. The retrosynthesis tool will predict a synthesis of the target molecule, based on some similar reports in the literature. Some of these similar reactions will populate the results. Now, while there's a lot of different proposed conditions that Reaxys thinks are somewhat similar, there's only some of these conditions that are relevant to our molecule of interest. For example, we want to avoid the use of alkyl bromides or similar leaving groups. We want to go directly from an alcohol to an ether, using 2 alcohols as coupling partners. So let's pick out some reaction conditions that do that. I've chosen 2 potential examples which I think show promise, and now we're going to selectively display only these 2 sets of conditions. We can come back later, and these 2 sets of conditions will still be here. Alternatively, if we want to export them, it's easy to do that too. Hopefully this has been helpful for showing you some of the useful stuff you can do with the Reaxys retrosynthesis planning tool. Hopefully this will help you come up with new ideas for your research, which will help you solve problems faster. I want to thank Reaxys for their support of this channel. Today's video is sponsored by Reaxys. Reaxys is my preferred chemistry information system for searching chemical reactions and related literature. They also have a free app for iOS and Android called Reaction Flash. Reaction Flash is an app with over 1,000 named reactions in organic chemistry, and you can quiz yourself on how these reactions work, what reactants are used, and what sorts of products are formed. I have specifically used Reaction Flash as a way to learn more reactions that may help me come up with new ideas for my research. The app allows you to view the mechanism of named reactions, test your knowledge with an interactive quiz, and search through numerous specific examples of these reactions from peer-reviewed literature. Thousands of students and researchers already use Reaction Flash. Reaction Flash is a great app as an up-to-date reference and learning tool for chemical reactions, so why not download it today and give it a try? You can download it on iOS or Android by clicking the link in the description. That way they'll know you came from here. I'd like to thank Reaxys for their support of this channel.
So it's been a really awesome experience to be able to showcase Reaxys and Reaction Flash to the viewers, as these are tools that a lot of researchers were completely unaware of when I started doing YouTube. We have a community Discord server, it's just like a place where people can talk about chemistry, work on chemistry problems, etc. And the majority of the people we were encountering hadn't heard of Reaxys before. So there's been value for students as well as researchers when just discussing this in our videos, as well as in our community Discord. So in the future, we're planning on doing more tier lists and covering more interesting topics in chemistry. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, you're welcome to scan this QR code on screen now. And we're always looking for more collaborators. Something that's really missing on YouTube right now is coverage of process chemistry and large-scale industrial chemistry, broadly speaking. So if anybody listening to this would be interested in collaborating, please do reach out after the conclusion of this presentation. In summary, you can use Reaxys to help train people. You can use Reaction Flash to help train people. And it can also help you just figure out literature more easily, which is really hard as a chemist, because depending on your project, who knows what you need to do? You might just be doing coupling reactions, but if you're like most researchers, that's probably not the case. Additionally, I'd like to thank Reaxys again for their support of our YouTube series. And yeah, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention as well. Finally, I'd like to thank the people from Big Marker who've been supporting this whole series of presentations today. And with that, I think we're going to be moving over to Giulia. I think you're muted, Giulia.
Can you hear me now? Yes. So thank you so much, Josiah. That was just really brilliant. And I love how you transition from an academic career to content creation. So keep up the good work. And so I'm just here to complement some of the concepts that Josiah has already shown you, but from the Reaxys perspective. So I'll just start sharing my screen. And you should now be able to see my Science Direct page. You might wonder why we are in Science Direct. We are in Science Direct because similarly to Reaction Flash, you can also search for named organic reactions and other topics related to chemistry in Science Direct. And so you can access Science Direct topics from the bottom page of Science Direct. If we go to the main page, you can scroll down and then you will find a browse by topic. But also if you simply input that in your browser, Science Direct Topics, you will end up in this page. And as you can see, in the topics page, you will have a plethora of options, and the ones around chemistry are listed here. Additionally, you can already search within topics. And for the example of today, I want to start with a named reaction. I'm going to go with a Mitsunobu reaction, and then I'll just hit find. So 3 topics are found that match Mitsunobu. And the one that I want to open is the reaction within the broader chemistry topic. And then once you're in the topic page for Mitsunobu reaction, you will find the definition, the reaction mechanism, and related literature around Mitsunobu. But the detail that I wanted to show you here is that the reaction and mechanism data and information that you find here is provided by Reaxys. So now what you can do is actually expand on the reaction scheme and find out a little bit more about Mitsunobu reaction. And you can also jump over to the mechanism to find out how the reaction works. And then from both of these pop-up windows, you can go below and view examples on Reaxys. So now I'm switching to the Reaxys tab. So hopefully you're seeing that now. And as you can see, Reaxys will display the reactions that are categorized under Mitsunobu reaction conditions. And in Reaxys, you will find 94,000 reactions, and you can scroll down as usual to see what has been reported in the literature. Additionally, I wanted to mention one filter that might be useful to further refine your set of results, which is the reactant availability. So imagine that you're looking for Mitsunobu type reactions as well as reaction products that are not very known in the literature. And you may use the typical yield, reagent, solvent filters, but also you can use reactant or product availability. In this example, I want to show you the reactant availability filtering, and you will see several options. You can filter for reactions that have all reactants for purchase, or reactions whose reactants preparation is known, etc. So for example, if I choose this one, it will tell me that for this subset of results, we have some reactants for purchase or preparation known. And then very simply, I can limit my set of reactions to this subset. And so here I can further explore the reaction page. I can also hide the reaction conditions, so I have a more compact view of what has been found. Um, if I then again expand the reaction conditions, I can identify the typical, reaction conditions for Mitsunobu type coupling reactions of alcohols, and then finally I can have a look to the reactants and the products. What else I can do? Well, I can of course, you know, stay in this page and export some data, but also I can choose, for example, this reaction product and take it to the retrosynthesis planner. So this operation will take me to the retrosynthesis planner. Okay. Yeah. Oh. Apologies, I was logged off Reaxys and I didn't realize that before the presentation. So I'm going back, and this time, as I'm logged in as a registered user, I will be seamlessly sent to the retrosynthesis planner. Well, let me do it differently. Let me copy the smiles and then go to and I go to draw. And now very simply, I will copy the structure as a smile string. And so here, complementing what Josiah has been nicely explaining about the retrosynthesis tool, you can actually choose different parameters for predicted synthesis routes or published synthesis routes. And so let me go over the published one first. You can decide here at this point the length and depth of the synthesis plans. You can even toggle on the last step only box. You can decide some branches, maximum number of steps, and also stop searching if building blocks are commercially available, and even decide an assumed yield for reactions without a reported yield. And for the predicted parameters, length of route, interestingly, regioselectivity, if that's something that you want to consider in your synthetic route. And you can, for example, modify the shipping time and the maximum price per gram. So, for example, I want to find building blocks whose maximum price per gram is $50 per gram. Very interestingly, with our new ICTOS-powered predictive retrosynthesis tool, you can also enter information yourself to direct the synthesis, the predicted route wherever you want it. You can easily check Josiah's videos or try it out for yourself. And with that, I think my time is up, and we will have the floor open for questions.
Josiah, Giulia, thank you for your presentations. So we have about 15 minutes for questions and plenty of questions for you, Josiah, so I hope you're ready. As the video indicated, Reaction Flash is free to download. Now, do you need Reaxys access for it?
Nope. You can just log in, or you don't even have to log in. You just download the app and you can open it.
Great.
It's
simple enough.
Super convenient.
So I actually like this next question because oftentimes in my own home, there's new phrases being said, and I have to look them up and kind of understand what's going on with our younger generation. So what would you say to professors, teachers to connect better with the new generation?
So actually, I wouldn't focus so much on the language used as much as just you have to explain why we're doing what we're doing at all. Like, there has to be a clear explanation of why the chemicals that we're discussing are being discussed, whether that's like an excerpt from Ullman's encyclopedia discussing real world applications of stuff, or there's like real use cases for the development of a drug and the discussion of a disease. I think as soon as there's a tangible example, at least in my experience, when TAing, mentoring, and tutoring, that's when students connect. It's the moment that they can care. So if you can help them care, they will. And that's what we've been trying to do with the YouTube channel as well. Because it's like, do you know what's the worst part about science is when it's boring and it doesn't make sense.
No, I love that answer. I mean, people are motivated by how they feel. And I think connecting in that way and explaining the reasons why is so critical in all aspects of life. That was a great answer, Josiah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next question is 3 parts. What make a paper a most important paper? How do you select them? And how often do you do literature reviews?
So it's a very complex process that's hard to fully describe. Sort of like when you have an AI model, like you can have feedback mechanisms that improve how the selection criteria are being done. But basically, I'm really picky. And I've been really picky at looking at papers since I was an undergrad. I had a mentor named Benson, and one of the first things he told me was make sure you keep up to date with the literature. So right when he told me that, I downloaded the ACS to Go app and I still check it. Like even this week, I've been still checking it. I did have to filter off JOC though, because it's just too many bad JOC articles. But essentially, you have to find filtering mechanisms that provide quality papers to your attention span. So whether that's an RSS feed, or we have a channel in our Discord where people recommend good papers, or you have friends who send you good papers, whether that's on LinkedIn or you're following on Twitter people who post interesting papers. There's several different streams to finding good papers, but I wouldn't say any one of those streams is great. You need a combination of them to get somewhere interesting. So that's partially where some of them have come from. When I've attended conferences in the past, especially fluorine conferences, I've come across a lot of chemistry that I've been exposed to that's stuck, and I've just been like holding on to and waiting for a good opportunity to make into a video. We also have a really large repository of things that we could make into a video. We just have to find how all the pieces fit together. Like right now, we're focusing more on review articles. So to answer the third part, it's kind of like a never-ending literature review. Like I'm a chemist, so I find it interesting to look at the literature, and chemistry is just not good enough yet, so I have to keep looking, right? Like it's just like a never-ending search for the next cool reaction.
Oh, that's great, Josiah. Your passion definitely radiates. For that chemist, how do you plan to innovate on your channel during this year and going forward? Do you have any exciting plans to share?
Sure. So we've had 2 really big videos that we've been working on for quite some time. I'm not sure when they're going to be published yet, but one of them is a video on ADHD. I think the script so far, or at least the research document for that one's like 23,000 words. And so hopefully we can eventually finish that. And we've also been working on a really big video about anabolic steroids, just covering all of the angles, all the considerations. And we'd like to branch out more from the tier list type content. But if you're a company out there who'd like to sponsor a video like that, make sure you reach out, because we could use some sponsors for experimental content.
I appreciate
that's the most exciting stuff. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Another question. This one's a bit long. So how can media platforms be leveraged to enhance collaborative research and communication among emerging chemists? And what are the potential challenges and opportunities in integrating these digital tools into traditional scientific education and practice?
So I'm going to start with the end part, the challenges. So I don't know whether these challenges are legitimate or just perceived, but if I was a professor and I was uploading anything about my research group online, I would be concerned that the university would want to claim to whatever I produce. So like, if you're going to be doing that, make sure you've cleared it with your department first, or do it something completely unrelated to your name so they'll have no idea ever. And could you repeat the first part again?
Sure. How can media platforms be leveraged to enhance collaborative research and communication among emerging chemists?
Just show people who you are. Like, show people that you're passionate about science. Tell them what your actual problems are. Be open. The more open and trusting you are, the more open and trusting other people are. So at least in my experience, collaboration wise, prior to doing YouTube, if you just give people good ideas that you have, like, hey, I saw you did this with your research. Have you tried doing this? That's usually enough to start a collaboration. I've even got co-authorship on a paper from doing that before. But on YouTube, it's just way better, right? Because you can edit everything about your research down to a 2-minute video if you wanted. If you're a professor, you could highlight the really cool stuff that you have going on. You could highlight where you're currently going. You could have a call for grad students. You could articulate your problems in a way that collaborators would come across. And if you've titled your video in a way and posted it somewhere like LinkedIn or Twitter, where you'll start reaching people, you'll start getting impressions for potential collaborators. I think going to conferences also is huge and underappreciated. And if you're a grad student and you haven't been to a conference yet, and if you're an undergraduate student who hasn't been to a conference yet, those would be 2 really useful ways to accelerate your chemistry knowledge. But I would say everybody can do it. It's free. YouTube hosts it for you. And if it's good, it's algorithmically incentivized to be shown to people. So I would just say it's something to take advantage of that a lot of people are afraid to use. So just use it. Yeah.
That's great, Josiah. Yeah, I think this is such a relevant question because folks that are in the lab and they're thinking about beyond their PhD or what to do. I know this is a question that I asked myself many, many times. How did you move from being a chemist in the lab to a career as a content creator?
Sure. My funding was running out as I was starting to write up my PhD thesis. And I've been friends with a guy who'd been making YouTube videos for just over a decade, a YouTuber called I'm Kibitz. And him and I were really good friends. He was my cool YouTuber friend. I was his cool chemist friend. And we gradually got to talking about systems and data and analytics. And eventually I came to realize you could just do YouTube if you look at the feedback mechanisms enough, right? You can improve your presentation skills by looking at when people are retained and not retained. Even though it's an audience, it's not the same people over and over. That just helps get more valid. Like certain people might just respond weirdly to you in one context. So gradually, the more you do that, you can start growing an audience and growing a following. And if you're talking about stuff people are interested in hearing about and producing educational media that, like, all of us know that like DMP oxidations are better than a Swern, at least in terms of operational simplicity and smell. But there isn't like DMP in all of these presentations online still. There's some, right? There's always some, but there's like 1,000 other things like that. So yeah, I guess I just kind of drove that passion into YouTube, and it works because I had valid feedback mechanisms. If you can improve at what you're doing, you can usually grow. One of the other motivators that I had, I was originally going to go the whole postdoc professor route, was I wanted residual income. I wanted to have residuals on everything I earn. So if you have a YouTube channel and you're getting new views, that still is a new source of ad revenue. And if it's substantial enough, that could be a regular income stream. So it's complex, but at the same time, it's calculated, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Thank you again. Now, this next question is focused a bit more on Reaxys. You've used Reaxys extensively in your studies. Moving on to your current role as a content creator, what is particularly useful or interesting about using Reaxys and Reaction Flash?
So I like to search the literature for interesting molecules. We're working on a spicy chemical tier list right now. So I was looking for analogs, vendors for various different spicy chemicals because like I just want to have good coverage of this. So I like to use Reaxys to try and expand a topic that hasn't been well explored on YouTube or well explored in regular circles. There might be reviews and stuff that have them, but to even find a review that covers an interesting compound, you still have to find it through a database usually. And so Reaxys would be like one way into those databases. Yeah, other times it would just be like problem solving. Like I still like to help people with their problems. So sometimes we'll be using Reaxys to work on a problem that someone's encountering in their research. I also just like to look up how reactions work. I'm a chemist. Like just because I stopped doing lab work doesn't mean I can turn my brain off. It's like I still wonder about all the things I wondered about during my PhD. So yeah, I probably use Reaxys like 5 times a week at least still.
Oh, that's great. We love to hear that.
Yeah.
Next question. How do you plan to diversify your content beyond tier lists?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Right.
Currently, it's the most financially viable series that we have on the channel. So our current plan is to try and find more sponsors who are more willing to take risks on content that we would be more interested in producing, but might not have as far of a reach. So this is a perfect case of where Reaxys has been really helpful because the important paper series would not be financially viable. And the only reason it's continued is through the support of Reaxys and as a passion project for me. And so that's one of the other things about online media for chemistry, especially, is like, if your goal is to make money, you probably shouldn't become a YouTuber unless you can figure out how to like springboard an entire viable business. Yeah.
Yeah, as you mentioned, you're a chemist at heart. You love the field. You think about it frequently. What recent developments in chemistry, in the chemistry field, excite you most?
A lot of the work from the Macmillan Group, especially with their their alcohol radical formation. So they have this reagent, which they call their NHC reagent. There's this really cool technique where you can functionalize an alcohol. It forms this ether-like motif. And then upon treatment with a photocatalyst, I think they're using one of their iridium photocatalysts, you generate a carbon-centered radical. So you can take alcohols and convert them to carbon-centered radicals in one pot. And that's really useful. They've explored several different types of chemistry with these radicals. And I think it'll be exciting moving forward to see what else the field does with it. Because we're starting to get to a place where we're almost at Lego building blocks, at least for the types of stuff like library synthesis are concerned. So I like new ways to make libraries. So anything that helps enable that would be pretty cool.
Great. Someone in the audience would also like to know what your favorite journals are.
So I like JAX, but I wish we could have JAX and filter out all the organic chemistry papers. That's what I want. Just like give us that, JAX. I used to like Engavante Chemie, but after they reject you enough times, you get bitter. I like Orglet because they do a pretty good job of filtering out the wheat from the chaff. JOC does not, but Orglet is pretty good still. Orglet, there's just some interesting gems in there that like you wouldn't find if you don't read it. And yeah, the diamonds in the rough are always worth looking for. But in JOC, it's just so hard. Too rough.
Yeah, that one stung a bit. I get it. I have some of those on my back as well.
I published 2 papers in JOC, to be fair. So, I'm just saying.
Now, you've already answered this question somewhat, but I'd like to pose it again. It's 2 parts. If you can turn back time, would you choose your current career again? That's the first part. The second part is, what other advice do you have for chemistry PhD students today?
Go to conferences, network, learn about what we actually do as chemists. Like, you don't get a chemistry degree and go do the exact chemistry that you were taught in undergrad. So try and figure out what it is you actually want to do. Try and figure out what chemistry looks like in the real world. However, the best way to do that is for you in your specific context. It's going to be different for everyone. And could you repeat the first part again?
Sure. If you could turn back time, would you choose your current career again?
I would say yes. I just wish that I was more concerned about practical applications earlier so that everything I was taught could have been more cohesive earlier. I wish I had read Ullman's Encyclopedia a lot earlier, just context-wise, because it just makes sense about the world in terms of chemistry than almost any other chemistry reference. Like the Merck Index and the Chemical Rubber Company Handbook are pretty good too. So I'd say like more reading earlier would have been something I would have done. But in terms of like the path that I've taken, I had to get my foot in the door with research. I had to go to conferences. I had to work that extra 20% to get through grad school. And it's ended up here. So I'm relatively happy with how things have gone, but there's always things that you could tweak here or there.
Josiah, I'd like to thank you again for your time and answering all of our questions. Appreciate it. Now, I'd like to invite our audience to join the tips and tricks session, and I'll hand it over to our expert customer consultant and solution engineer colleagues.